Hey guys, Dave here from Tab and Slot Off-Road, and today we're going to shoot an assembly video on our new Stubby kit with the fog light holes. A lot of you asked for this. In order to make room for this, our original Stubby kit put the winch very deep down inside of the frame rails, and it offers the maximum protection, the lowest fair lead height out of any of our bumpers. But those of you that have the factory fog light option, right now you have fog lights you have nothing to do with, so that's no good. So many of you asked for a new Stubby that moved the winch up and makes room for the fog lights pretty close to where the factory location is. So this is a complete kit. It comes with the main faceplate. This is the winch plate down here. You've got the two end covers, right? You've got the mounting plates and the through plates, or the pull plates. And then you've got the tube lasered light buckets, and of course all the hardware that you need to put this together. So we're going to get started on this in just a minute. Before we do, I just want to mention that you're building something here where craftsmanship pays off. So the more time and finesse you put into this, the better off you're always going to be. Now, when we build these bumpers in production and we send them out for paint and all that, you know, we spend a lot of money building fixtures so we can build them quickly. However, the fixtures actually don't produce a better part. In this case, hand building does, right? Because all of the mounting points are set, you know, with tab and slot, right? So that's all fixed, and you know, the laser is a CNC machine. We hold plus or minus 0.003 on it every single day. So that's all fixed. So really all of the craftsmanship goes into the finish and the appearance end of these bumpers. And because they're not being built in a fixture, you actually have better access to weld most of it. So don't think that you can't do this. The Stubby bumper line is probably our easiest bumper kit to build. And when you're done with it, you're going to have a piece that's going to be virtually indestructible. If you can bend one, I'd love to see a picture of that, and I hope you live through it. So I'm going to move some things around and get some 2x4s and some other tools, and I'll be right back and we'll get started. Alright guys, to get started, first of all I'm going to try something a little different with this video. A lot of you have asked for more close-up shots, so I've moved the camera so this is all you can see instead of looking at my pretty face, okay? Also, I know there's a horrible echo on this video. I apologize for that. My wireless microphone cord, right, got caught in a grinder and munched it, and I don't have a new one here yet. So I apologize for that, but we're fabricators, we're welders, we're going to tough it through, okay? So there's a couple of things you need to do before you get started. First of all, you need to assemble the light ring onto the light bucket, and that just tab and slots on there. You can see that's a really good fit. Pretty hard to mess that one up, okay? So, of course, I haven't talked about looking for burrs on any of this stuff. In most spots, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a burr on our parts. Sometimes on the tube, because it traps so much heat in there, there'll be, you know, a little bit of laser slag that you can knock off with a screwdriver or what have you. But most of the time, it's pretty good. And on the tube stuff on this bumper, it doesn't get in the way. All the rest of the parts look fantastic, okay? So you need to weld these. We'll just put those face down before you plug them into the bumper. The other thing that we need to do is we need to take our two mounting plates, they've got the 4 holes in them, and we need to make a left and a right. So let me move these, and what you do, you'll notice these are flathead bolts, but we don't countersink these holes, and that makes that head stand up right off of there, and that gives us a perfect spot to put a couple little welds. Keep in mind that all we're doing here is holding these in place. Once the bumper is actually bolted to the frame horns of your Jeep, then you know, they can't come loose. So what you're going to do is you're going to make, like I said, make lefts and rights, and you're going to put these bolts in and put the nuts on finger tight. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we're going to weld a little bit. So what we're doing is, like I said, we're just putting these nuts on finger tight, and again, because that's a flathead bolt in a round hole, the nut holds it square, and the hole decides where it's supposed to be, right? Because it's a cone on the bottom side. So now we've got the laser setting the bolt pattern, right? Because this all tab and slots into other laser cut stuff, and that makes it very accurate, okay? So now we're going to put a little weld here and a little weld here on all 4 of these, and we're going to put a little weld here, a little weld here, and a little weld here. Doesn't really matter where you put the weld. Obviously, you don't want to cover up the screw holes. You don't want to cover up a drain hole, and you don't want to weld here because okay, so once again, my camera battery has died. This thing's eating them like popcorn today. So, but you can see just what we talked about. We built a left and a right. These are still very hot, but we just put a little weld on either side of the bolt, about 3/8 to a half an inch. That weld is not structural. All it's going to do is keep that bolt from turning, right, as you tighten the nut down. And on the light buckets, these don't need much either. We put a little 1/2 inch guy there, and another 1/2 inch there, another 1/2 inch there on both of them. So I'm going to move this stuff aside, get a couple of 2x4s up here, get the faceplate up here, and we're going to put this together. Okay, so I've moved everything aside and I've taken our faceplate, I've got it up on a couple of boards. You'll see why here in a little bit. The first thing we need to do is we need to squeeze this closed all the way. When we bend these, we can only bend these so far before they run into each other and start to cause a problem, right? So there's some spring back, and that causes this to be open. Now, these cuts here, they have and you'll see when you get your kit, they have a little cutout weld relief, and that's to sink the weld in. But the tops of them, about a 1/4 inch on each one, doesn't have that relief. And what you want to do is you want to squeeze this together until these touch, and then put a little tiny tack weld on the inside. You can do that with either a heavy-duty ratchet strap, or if you've got a bar clamp, that's what I'm going to use. That works great too. So let's do that. Okay, and you can see as I tighten this bar clamp, it starts to draw everything together. And I've got the top almost touching here, and the bottom not quite. Okay, so that's not too bad, that's normal. And what I'm going to do here now, you can see I've got a little bit of misalignment here, so I'm going to grab a vice grips. Obviously there's several ways to do this. I'm just going to tighten this down, and I'll get a shot of this, a close-up shot with the camera here, but I'm just going to tighten this down, and what I'm hoping to do is bring those 2 plates in line, and that is in fact what happened. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to grab you a close-up of this, and then I'll shoot a tack in here. You're right there. Alright, so I got the top tacked up, and now I'm going to move the clamp down here to the bottom and see if I can't pull that just a little bit tighter. The reality is, it probably doesn't matter, right? The way these things go together, it wouldn't be the end of the world if those weren't touching. But because we're craftsmen, we always want to do the best we can. So I'm going to put this on here and let's see what happens. If this was a T-handle, I think I'd be done by now, but I can barely grab that handle. So these are within a 30-second of touching. They line up real good. I'm going to shoot a tack. All right, and that's all I'm looking to do, okay? I'm gonna take my bar clamp back off. Okay, so now we're looking to start putting this thing together. Now the way these go together, and I'm gonna do this upside down so y'all can see it. You've got this winch plate. This is etched on one side. That means nothing. We do that because we make a lot of these that look very, very close to identical. So you're probably going to want to put that on the bottom. So I'm going to turn that over. We're going to grab our through plates. Those are going to go on here, just like this. Excuse me. Just like that. On this particular bumper. Grab my other one. I'm going to put this one in. You can see how that all tab and slots together. Now, we're going to take our through plate, lift this up just a little bit so we can slide that in. Everything tab and slots together. That sits down just like that. I'm going to move my weld clamp. You probably couldn't see that. What I did on the other side there, I didn't realize you couldn't see it, is all I did was I lifted this up a little bit. I took this one, that all tab and slots together. I dropped it back into place, okay? I'm going to move this back to center and get you some close-ups, and then we'll talk a little bit more before we start tack welding.
Okay guys, so you can see on the screen I've got some pictures that I just took, some stills, and you can see what you're looking for is for all of this tab and slot work to fit very, very closely. And if it does and there's no gaps anywhere, you are good to go. Now there may be some gaps here out at the top and bottom. Let me jump back out into the shop and show you that.
Okay guys, so again, let me spin this around so you can see it from this side here. Still got it up 2x4s, 4x4s there. Okay, so what you're looking for here is for this assembly to be tight. All right, when this is tight, it can't move very much, right? It makes a solid box. Furthermore, this plate should be in tight. Right? And that whole thing winds up being a very flat, very rigid, and very accurate assembly. Now, I'm going to spin this so you can hopefully see this. I've got a little gap at the top of this plate. Okay? And same thing on this side. And let's do this. I've got a little gap up here. So where this plate meets the face plate, I've got some minor gaps, right? And we control this stuff pretty tight going through the press brake, but even a high precision bend on this thick material, it's going to flex, it's going to vary plus or minus half a degree. So we've intentionally designed this entire assembly so that if the tab and slot work is good, the rest of it is just visuals, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a bunch of tack welds in here and tack everything together, and then I'll grab some close-ups of where I put those tacks so you can see them. After that, we're going to take these nuts back off and we're going to go try it on the Jeep. Guys, I zoomed way in on this one because I wanted you to see something. I wanted to talk about this real quick. On the ends, whenever we do a tab that goes through a slot, we make kind of this weird dog bone cut. And that's for accuracy on the laser, okay? But one of the side effects is it gives us this little half-moon circle to shoot tack welds into, and that winds up giving us a really strong tack because it's edge to edge, okay? So I tend to do that because I have a lot of faith in our tab and slot work, okay? So at this stage, that's what I'm doing. But keep in mind that wherever you're putting tacks, If you may have to get it back apart, then doing that is bad because it's strong, it's very hard to get at. So instead, put a tack someplace here where you can get a cutoff wheel on it, right? You don't have to do this with the structural part. Like I said, if the tab and slot works good, you're good back here. When we go to put these cover plates on, I'm going to be pretty selective about where I tack because there's a chance I may have to bust one loose. So I just wanted to mention that. I'm going to keep tack welding. Okay, I showed you where we tacked this up, and we're good to go. We took it outside, we tried it on the Jeep, it fits like a dream, so you're good to proceed. So let me take my ground clamp off. So you can see, again, where we've tacked it up. We've got a nice fit here, right? We're going to be able to just lay a beautiful bead down there in that little bit of gap. You won't have to back gouge that, although you certainly can if you want to put a heavier bead in. Looking at the front of this here, there's going to be a couple of things we're going to have left to do after we put these cover plates on, and we're going to do that next. So we're going to plug the fog light, the light buckets in from the back, and then you're going to want to weld this completely and grind it back off because it's just easier to do before you put those doubler plates on. You've just got a little bit more room, okay? So that's what we're going to do there. Right now I want to talk about these covers, okay? So let me grab them. There's one for each side, pretty easy to see where they go. And they go right on here. And you'll see we've got, we always try and do this with our tab and slot where we'll relieve most of it so you can sink a good plug weld down in there, but then come right over the top of the tab, and when you grind it smooth, you're good to go. I'm going to try and see this here. This is actually a pretty good fit on this side. The gap's a little big there, but that's okay. We're going to lay a nice corner-to-corner bead in there, and by the time we, well, if we decide to grind that back off, then, it'll be this beautiful organic shape out here. Let's take a look at this side. Okay, this side isn't too bad up here, but I do have, let me move this over. I was kind of hoping we would. I do have a gap down here, okay? So it's going to be kind of specific where I tack this one. And I guess that's what I'm going to concentrate on. So I'm going to get this side over here tacked up first, because it's good to go, so I can pull on it to help set this side. Let me get this one tacked. I'll be right back, and we'll do the tough one. All right, folks, so when I flipped this thing over and I actually got around the other side of it, I realized that the fit was actually much better than I thought when I originally looked at it here from the backside. So what I actually did, because I wanted to show you guys how to deal with these gaps, is I actually went and grabbed a pair of these from our first prototype run, and we had since shortened them up. So these are actually longer, and they're causing a gap intentionally, okay? So, because I wanted to show you how to deal with that. So you can see this big gap down here, okay? And what you probably can't see is an overlap here. Well, what's going to happen is I'm going to squeeze this down to get rid of some of this gap, because this is still a plenty usable part. That's the reality. We'll weld this from the inside first, and that'll give us a place for the weld to sit on the outside. We'll be able to put a beautiful bead right there. But what's going to happen is as I squeeze this shut, this overlap is going to get worse, okay? So everything else is tacked. I've tacked this guy just up here and on this front corner. Hopefully you can see that right there. I'm trying not to knock my camera over, but on this front corner. And so that at the top of it's tacked pretty decent, okay? So let's try and move this. I'm going to grab my bar clamps, this one we used before. And I'm just going to tighten this guy down. I really don't like these bar clamps, incidentally. I'll try and keep my arms out of the way. So watch this gap down here. And this is going to ride at an angle, right? But as I snug this up, you can see that gap kind of closing up, and as I put pressure on it, I can close it up pretty good. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to close that gap up, get it as good as I can, because it's strictly appearance. Get my arm out of the way, wow, and shoot a little tack right here. First, I'm going to put the ground clamp back on the bumper. Try that again. And I missed. I want this to stick, so I put a pretty good one on there, right? Now I can pop this bar clamp off. Okay, so now, like we talked about, I've made this overlap right here. I hope you guys can see that. Yeah, this overlap right here even worse. So I probably, let's try it. I probably can just do it with the pliers. I could, but I'm not going to be able to hold it. Let me grab a vice grips and I'll be right back. Alright, so I said vice grips. What I actually wound up grabbing was the old monkey wrench. So we're going to snug that down. And this actually works out pretty good because it's going to allow me to put a little bit of pressure on this with my hip and hold this while I tack weld it. And you'll see all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to open this up until this corner. Let me move this out here until this corner right here is corner to corner. It's overlapping right now. There goes the camera. All right, the only problem here is the fact that I'm alone today. If I had another set of hands, this would be real easy. So what I wind up rigging up here was the monkey wrench and a big hip and a crescent wrench, and we're going to lean into it. And shoot a tack. Okay, so we didn't get rid of the overlap completely, but that's plenty acceptable. We've got a nice corner-to-corner place to put a weld bead here, and everything's going to work out just fine. I'm going to move the camera one more time, and we're going to finish this up. All right, everybody, so there's only a couple of steps left. I flipped this around, so next we're going to put in the light buckets. And I can't see where I'm pointing here, but I'm assuming that I'm pretty close. You can see that the light buckets tab and slot in the slots as well. If you remember, we made those earlier in the video. So they've got these tabs on them, and they're relieved, just like all of our other tab and slot work, and they're designed to be welded from the front. So these have to go on and be welded, and then you'd be doing yourself a favor if you grind one weld off before you move to the next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set these in here. Like I said, they can only go in one place, so I don't think there's any mystery there. And like all of our tab and slot work here, pop that guy down in there. You know, they're completely self-locating, and they're sitting there on their own right now. So I'm going to put a couple of tack welds on the inside here just to hold them in place. Then I'm going to weld and grind the front side, show you that, and show you the last step. Alright, we're drawing to a close here finally, and you can see, like I said, I've welded the light buckets in, I've plug welded them, and then I've ground off the majority of this weld. Now we'll finish this up with a detail sander, a little detail grinder a little bit later, you know, but I wanted to get the bulk of that off there before I put these big doubler plates in there. And let me move this a little bit here. So the last step, other than finish welding it, is to put these doubler plates in. And all we're doing here, these are cut a little bit oversized, a little bit over a 1-inch hole, designed for a 7/8 shackle pin. That's kind of the norm. And all we're doing is we're putting those on and we're feeling the inside of the hole to make sure that we've got good alignment. There's really no point in, you know, pinning these up. I mean, you're certainly welcome to. We do that in production simply because it's faster, but the reality is that if you just align these up by feel, they wind up being pretty good. Okay, let me get this one. Perfect. All right, and then what I do is I leave the clamp on here, and when I weld these, and we'll talk a little bit about welding here in just a second, I come over the top, stop in the middle, come over the bottom, stop in the middle, right? So since I have the clamp up here, I usually put 4 tacks on the outside here, on the outside corners. And now I'm going to put 1 tack right here in the middle of this groove. Okay, and that one's pretty healthy. Let me pop this off of here, leave that one on there. The only thing left to do at this point is finish weld this bumper. Now I've got a video coming about how I grind them and how we do it here in the shop, but I don't think it's probably the best resource for you because everybody that I hire, that I teach to do it the way I like to do it, tell me that, yeah, we hate that. And they wind up doing it a different way anyway. The bottom line is, you've got these nice corners, and you're looking to fill these with a nice perfect bead. And if you are going to grind, for instance, this corner right here, if you are going to grind this, the way I do this is I take a soft pad, right? I usually use a big 7-inch angle grinder with a soft pad on it, and I keep it very flat. And I go flat here and flat here, and I bring this to a point, and then I take a little hand grinder and I round that point off. And what I do is, you know, the grinding disc always spins the same direction, right? So I grind onto the material, okay? I find when I grind off of the material, then I wind up with a big back gouge right before where I was trying to gouge. So I grind onto the material. There's a ton of YouTube videos. I've learned so much from other guys on YouTube about welding and finishing. I would recommend that you do some searching on YouTube and take a look at some of those other videos that are out there on welding and grinding and finishing, because they're going to be much better than what I can give you. The bottom line is, let me just pop this off of here. Actually, let me put these 4 tacks on here, and then I don't have to come back to this. 5 tacks, excuse me. All right. Okay, so here's the deal. Depending on what kind of welder you are, you may not want to grind this. I personally love the look of a perfect MIG weld bead, and I'll weld this outside up and I'll leave it like that. On the inside, let me flip this over. It's important to weld your winch plate pretty solid to these guys, okay? The tab and slot work does a lot of the work, but you do have to hold it together. We don't, in production, weld this plate solid. We stitch it with like 3.5-inch welds, okay? So I'm not going to tell you to weld everything solid. I'm not going to tell you what to weld. You're assembling this, so you're responsible for the welds that are on it, and you're responsible for the safety in using it if one of your welds fails. So if you've got a little 110 MIG machine at home, you may want to make sure and put some extra beads on it. If you've been doing it for a long time, you're going to know exactly how much weld you need to pile on it. We used to give out a weld print when we started doing this, and we found that it just confused more people than helped people. So keep in mind where your pull points are. We should talk about that. And what we do with these pull points is we put this in position and we weld all the way around here, okay? We put this in position, we fill this groove, and then we flip it over and do the same on the bottom groove, okay? These are grade 50 doubler plates, and if you do that, that becomes the strongest pull point that you can get your hands on, because it does protrude through this faceplate, and because of the tab and slot work, does have a direct mechanical connection to the frame horn. So I hope you enjoy your project. Please send us some pictures. Like us on Facebook, tell your friends about us, and make sure to follow us on eBay. Every time we release a new product, eBay is the first place we post it, usually Facebook second. And we've got some very, very cool stuff coming. So I'm Dave from Tab and Slot Off-Road. Go weld something.